Welcome back to True Crime Broads. We are honored to have Chris Bennett's family on the show. And right now, we're going to hear directly from Chris himself. Chris, thank you for being on True Crime Broads. We would love to hear you tell the story of what happened that day. Is he talking?
Yes, can you hear?
Not at
Not at
all.
all. No, we barely hear something maybe faint, but we can't tell what he's saying.
Just a second. Just a second, honey.
We
Okay.
can we can edit this out. Don't worry.
Okay. Try to talk now. Can you hear us?
I can hear you, not him.
Oh man, this is
There he is.
um
I just heard him say something.
okay, let's try it again. Okay, now talk, honey.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, we're good, honey.
Okay. Okay. Welcome back to True Crime Broads. We are honored to have Christopher Bennett's family on our episode here about this tragedy that happened back in 2003. Chris, thank you so much for joining us. Could you just kind of give us a brief overview of what happened on that day on July 25th, 2003?
Sure. I mean, there was a lot more that led up to it, but on that night, me and one of my friends.
Do you want to? Oh, sorry for interrupting. Do you want to kind of tell them what happened a couple days before so they know
Sure.
what? Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'd rather start at the beginning of it.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. All right. So,
Okay, I'll start over. I'll just start over and say, welcome back to True Crime Broads. We are honored to have Christopher Bennett's family on this episode, and we're going to hear directly from Chris right now. Chris, thank you for being on True Crime Broads. If you could just give us some background on what led up to that July 25th, 2003, and what happened that day.
sure. So a few days before this, my sisters, they wasn't allowed to be out of their dad's sight ever, really. And I started going down to the house to play with my sisters out in the field and stuff. That's where I got to hang out with them at. So I would do a little bit of work around their house in order to spend time with them. I was already aware of the abuse that he was doing to them because of my older brother Michael ended up getting a malicious wounding or an aggravated wounding. When Vince beating him up, my older sister was crying that he was abusing them, and my brother had came in drunk one night and seen him crying with the Augusta County cops there, taking pictures and their statements about what Vince was doing to him. We ended up becoming homeless after he kicked us out and get custody of my sisters. Even the abuse that I suffered from him when I was younger. But a couple days before this, around July 24th, 23rd, he allowed my older sister Ariana to walk down the road with me. We was going to their little favorite spot that they hunt and crawl at out of the creek. And she made me promise not to say or not to tell anybody what she was going to tell me about Vince abusing her and abusing her sisters, and how she would have to come outside sometimes while he kept my other two sisters inside. And so I knew that nobody else was going to help them. Social services has already been notified about it. They called my sisters pathological liars and threatened to terminate my mom's visits one time when they started talking about what Vince was doing to them. So the night that I went into the house, I actually had borrowed my buddy's gun, and we went there. He wanted $150 for me to borrow his gun. I did not have any money. So I went there that night and just breaking into the back door. A train just happened to come through at that moment, and I broke the back door open and got inside the house. Well, while I'm inside the house, I started to change my mind. In there for a few minutes, I started to change my mind and was getting ready to leave the house. Almost walking out the back door, and I heard my sister start crying. I turned back around, back down the hallway, and peeping into Vincent's bedroom, that's where I seen him molesting my youngest sister, Vicky. And I shot him. And went there and checked on my sister. She went back to sleep. When I came back out, I was getting ready to leave the house, and then I remembered that I have to get the money for this gun. So I had to go back in there and get this check. Left the house. When I got
Where
back
did you?
to Randy, I threw the checkbook to him. So that was that night.
Where did the gun come from?
That was my friend Randy's gun.
Okay.
Yeah, I had taken it into the house with me. It was a 7mm rifle. I don't remember ever putting the bullet in the gun. That part I still can't remember.
If you don't mind, if you don't want to answer this, obviously you don't have to, but what kind of abuse had you suffered at the hands of your stepfather?
A lot of it was more physical abuse, not as much sexual abuse. I mean, he used to follow me when I was little, and then of course he would do weird shit like stick his fingers in my mouth, or try to gag me with his fingers. Then other stuff, he would make me hold my breath until I was about to pass out. And when I was about to pass out, he would take his mouth and put it over my nose and my mouth, blow real hard, so it felt like my lungs was going to explode.
Goodness.
He used to test his medical equipment out on me when he was working. He was a volunteer at the rescue squad out there. They would be practicing for EMT, and he would try all his smelling salts and his adult tongue suppressors and stuff he would use on me. He started beating me when I started having my little brother sleep in bed with me. I started sleeping with all my clothes on, belt tied, and all that. So one night he came over there and he seen that I had my little brother Calvin in there with me. He showed up at the door, and when he seen him in there, he walked away, but he came back in there with his belt in his hand, and he just started yell at him. Of course, then my little brother died. He was 10. I was 11. So after that happened, of course, I had nobody else to stay in my room. I started having my friends stay over. He stopped that. I started having them sneak up the tree and stuff, going to the roof. I had to sneak them in through the window. After my 3 sisters were born, or after Vicky was born, he ended up getting real crazy, like real territorial almost. Where he started locking all the food that was in the house. He started locking it in his van. Would only go out there and get it for my sisters. He wasn't allowed to have food. And then one day, eventually, he just showed up with Augusta County cops and had us kicked out of the house. We didn't have any place to go. We became homeless. We ended up being split up amongst different families all over the place. And one time living in a tent on a mountain around March.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it was, and we ended up moving about maybe in 3 years from the year 2000 to 2003, we moved over 30 times. Didn't have anything. We was all of our possessions getting left behind from house to house or place to place.
So he had a history of molesting your younger sisters.
Oh, and Chris, do you want to bring up the other kid? You don't have to say his name, but
Yeah, well, before he moved in with us, he had been accused of molesting his 10-year-old stepson.
Oh,
You know, yeah, that was, and they removed him from the home. And
the police did, or someone else?
What? No, it was not. It was his stepson. It was his wife's.
his first wife's child.
And so the first wife is who removed him from the home?
No, the SRS did, or DCF.
Okay.
CPS took him out of the home, and for him to, they said that he would be split up from his family if he didn't retract his statement, and so he retracted what he had said, and they put him back into the house with him. And then they ended up getting divorced, and then he got with my mom, and he ended up moving in with us pretty fast. And once they had Ariana, my first sister, we moved out to Craigsville. But yeah, he used to. It was crazy because he used to come up to my bedroom. This was when he first moved into the house with us. He'd come up there and he would be talking to me at first, and then like he would start tickling me, getting me laughing, and while he's doing all that, then he'll start fumbling me. Putting these fingers in my mouth, like running these fingers over my teeth, and just a bunch of weird shit. But yeah, I mean, at the time, hell, I didn't know anything was even wrong about all that because I was so fucking young. So.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. How long did that continue? How old were you when he stopped bothering you like that?
Oh, I was probably about around 10 or 11 when it actually started like beating me with his damn belt all the time. Get whipped for the slightest thing. And, you know, he's a big guy, so I was a little tiny dude.
Right.
It's like 50-inch belt or something.
Dang. Is there
around me in the belt buckle would smack me.
Wow. Is there were CPS or the authorities, police or whoever made aware of all this?
Yeah, I had actually been pulled out of school one time. At that time that I can't even remember, I'm thinking it may have been Bessie Weller Elementary School. That a CASA worker actually pulled me out and had me, she was talking to me, asking if anything was happening. You know, my Aunt Carolyn had reported him for something like that because at a family reunion, he wouldn't let me out of his sight. I wasn't allowed to go to the bathroom without him being there. He would feed me, make me sit on his lap the whole time. You know, so she just seen that was odd, reported it. But, you know, I had just been really kidnapped by CPS when I was younger, put in foster care before Mom had met Vince. So I didn't trust any of them people. I'm not going to trust them to tell them things that are going on in the house when I've already been ripped out of my babysitter's arms and placed in a foster care where I didn't know these people.
Right.
Yeah, that's terrible.
That's terrible.
Yeah. And hell, I think I was maybe 4 or 5 years old at the time when they did that. They split me and all my brothers up in different foster homes. I didn't see them again until my mom came and picked us up. I guess a year or so later.
Now, I saw you tell this story on the Dr. Phil show. This would have been back in 2021, I believe. Dr. Phil is a powerful guy. That was a really good episode, by the way. All of you guys did a great job. Has Dr. Phil been able to open any doors for you guys with legal assistance or anything over these past few years?
No, not really. He had an attorney come on the show, and that attorney, right after that show, he ended up leaving the law firm and going to the private sector. So he was like, he could no longer represent me.
Mm.
So ended up getting, hopefully going to be my wife one day. Got Billie out of it.
But now, wait, what did you say?
I got Billie out of it. I met her from Dr. Phil's show.
Oh, that's
Oh,
awesome. I love it.
That is great.
That is so cool.
So, tell everyone, obviously you were charged, and tell us what you were charged with and the sentence that you received.
Well, I was charged with breaking and entering with armed with a deadly weapon and robbery and capital murder.
Wow.
So I ended up taking a plea agreement because my lawyers told me I was going to get the death penalty if I did not take it. So I ended up taking a plea agreement for 3 consecutive life sentences. And on my update sheet in Virginia at that time, a life sentence is 600 years. So essentially 1,800 years.
Yeah, I thank you for explaining that. We were trying to figure out where that 1,800 years comes from. They don't do that here in Texas.
Unbelievable.
That's pretty ridiculous. But
And there's some.
If you look it up online, if you try to look up a Virginia life sentence online, it'll say 25 years because they have 5 different sentencing laws. I think it is in Virginia right now, maybe more. They have the old law, they have a quarter law. These are different ones that have parole or good time or whatever. So under the old law, 496, life sentence was 25 years. But after that, a life sentence was 600 years. And
wow.
Such a big difference. I don't understand why would you go from 25 and maybe 25 to 50, but 25 to 600?
And the reason he took the plea is because they led him believe that he could get the death penalty.
Right.
But there were factors in the case that he would have never actually gotten the death penalty. So I really believe that was under false pretenses because to receive the death penalty in Virginia, you have to prove certain factors. Like if in Virginia, to get the death penalty, you have to have it has to be a really horrendous crime. But in his case, when Vince was shot, it was one shot to the head and it said death was instantaneous. So he would not have had the mitigating factors that would have led him to get a death sentence. And I think that the mitigating factors surrounding Vince abusing the kids, had they had went to a jury trial, I don't believe that he would have gotten the amount of time.
So was this a bench trial? There was no jury?
There was no trial. This was a plea agreement that he.
Oh, that's right. I'm so sorry. Yes.
That he ended up agreeing to.
You have
Right.
1 minute
Oh,
remaining.
we're about to lose Chris. We have 1 minute. Do you have anything you want to ask Chris before he goes, Renee?
No.
Okay,
I'll think of something.
Chris, we just want to thank you so much for joining us. We know your phone call's about to get cut off. We're going to continue talking to Billie, and we'll hopefully get to talk to you again. We're going to do another episode on this case, so maybe we can talk to you a second time.
Is there anything else you want to add before you go?
Well, I did forget to talk about my mom was, Billie, well, she knows the story. My mom was almost beat to death tonight.
Oh my gosh.
Can Billie tell that story if you get cut off?
Yeah, she can.
Okay. Yeah, we needed more than 20 minutes. Thank you so much. But we know you're about to get your phone cut
Love
off.
you, honey.
All right. Thank you, Chris. You're amazing. Hang in there. Okay. Billie, that was so awesome to get Chris to call in. Thank you for that. I know that probably wasn't easy to set up, and then we ended up being a few minutes late getting on. So thank you so much for your patience and for facilitating that call.
That's okay. We're kind of used to how it works there in prison. You never know what
That's
time you have. And
That's incredible. It worked out. We've
yeah.
had that trouble with people before that we've had call in from prisons, and sometimes they're on lockdown and they just can't do it.
Right.
So,
Yeah, it's good that it worked out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So, Billy, did you want to continue on with the story he was about to tell us about his mother?
Sure. Now I believe it was I think it may have been the same night. So his mother at the time was dating another guy. I believe his name was Mike. And so she had gotten severely beat that night by this guy named Mike. And I think his mom ended up making a phone call, had walked down to a local convenience store to try to make a phone call. And if I'm remembering right, I don't know if Chris happened to be going by the convenience store because I think she was trying to get a hold of the police. But I think Chris happened to be going back by and came in contact with his mother, and she had been beat pretty bad. And so he ended up.
Now, what is this in relation to the stepfather getting shot? Like what time period?
Oh, I believe this was maybe a couple hours before like this happened. So
This
Chris
is
ended
really
up, yeah. So Chris ended up going back to the trailer where she had been staying after the mom kind of told him what was going on to get that guy to come back into the house so the cops could get him. So like there is all this crazy stuff going on that night. You know, like all the aggravating factors before that, you know, we have Anna a couple days or the day before, actually, the day before telling Chris all of this stuff that's going on with her. And Chris still, I mean, he made that promise to Anna. He still had never told everybody the details of everything that she told him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because he is just a man of his word. Like if he promises his sister, you know, he's just, but it was horrible. So, you know, he's already got that stuff in his mind. Then he witnesses his mom just beat up. I mean, black eyes and, you know, so he's dealing with that, trying to get that Mike back into the trailer so the cops could arrest him, which they did, which they ended up getting him. And so all of this stuff happened in this short amount of time. And I believe that happened just a couple hours before Chris decided, you know, to go ahead with this. And then, and the crazy thing, and, you know, Chris says he really believes like it was just meant to be because, you know, he had when he was in the house, he started to change his mind and he was leaving.
And what was he
when
going to
hurt his sister.
ask Chris this? What was he changing his mind about?
Well, when Anna had told him what was going on, he knew he had to do something. So I can't exactly say exactly what was going through Chris's mind, but you know, he did get a hold of Randy and borrow a gun. So I don't know if his plan was to scare Vince. I don't know if he was just like had it. I can't say for sure what was going through his mind at that time.
Okay.
But I do know that, you know, he was deciding while he was in there, like, you know, this is a bad idea. I'm just going to leave. And that's when he heard his sister. And he says that, you know, had he had not heard her crying, he would have left. And that's what made him turn back around. So when the sister and Vince were in Vince's room, Chris had waited because there was like he was in I believe the bathroom area. So there's like this little hallway and there's this little bathroom area that the light was shining in through that bedroom where Chris could see what was going on.
Right.
So as soon as Vince stepped out of that room is when Chris shot Vince.
Right. Because he was hearing what he thought was his little sister being molested at that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you explain the part about the checkbook? I couldn't hear him completely, and I want to make sure everybody hears what because I missed that part of what he was explaining.
So the checkbook, okay, so when Randy had let Chris borrow that gun, he wanted Chris to pay him $150 to borrow his gun, to borrow his rifle.
Mhm.
And Chris didn't have any money at the time. He did grab the checkbook that the check actually in it was already made out to Chris because Chris was doing work for Vince. And that's why he was there a couple days before, too. So, I mean, it was already made out to Chris anyway, but he was like, I mean, at that point, after he killed Vince, it was like, I guess in his mind, like, well, whatever, because what else is he going to do at this point? Like, I'm sure he thought
Right.
life was over and he knew he was either going to go to prison or have to go on the run or something.
What
Yeah.
happened? What happened after the moment that Vince was shot? What did Chris do?
I think the first thing he actually went to do was go check on Vicky
Mm-hmm.
in the room. And Vicky was already back asleep. She was fine. And then so
But
that was what he immediately.
gunshots are loud, so I'm assuming the
Mhm.
gunshot woke Vicky back up.
Mm-mm. Nope.
Hmm.
None of the girls woke up.
Wow, that's amazing.
It is. So he said the one thing like he wishes now though that he would have done differently is just call the cops right then. Like,
Yeah.
So
but
when did the cops get notified of the shooting?
um I think it was like a couple days later. So
And where was Vince's body that whole time?
well okay. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I thought you I'm sitting there talking about when Chris and them went to the cops, but before that, it was the next morning. It
Okay.
was the next morning. It was the very next morning. So
And
um
who notified the police that Vince had been shot in his home?
it was Anna, the older sister.
Okay. How did she find
Yeah.
out? Was she in the home at the time and woke up in the morning and found him?
Yeah, she was in the home at the time. And like I said, none of the girls like woke up, which is crazy, which is crazy, but nobody woke up until the next morning.
Wow.
So
That is crazy.
yeah.
Wild.
So you're saying that, okay, so the next morning, she calls the police and they come out, and then the following day is whenever they catch up with Chris. Is that what you're saying?
I believe so. Yeah.
And then he
Yeah.
gets arrested right away, or do they just call him in for questioning?
Um, well, it was him and Randy that were called in for questioning.
Oh,
And
okay.
I think they already knew. I I think
Yeah.
at that time they already knew. And like I know his mom told me that when she first heard that Vince was killed, she actually never crossed her mind that it was Chris that did it. She said she thought if anybody had done it, it would have been Michael, which was the oldest brother, but she knew Michael couldn't have because he was in a couple towns away.
Okay.
So, because Michael was the one that had gotten the assault charge or gotten charged with assault on Vince. I
Mm.
think a year before this happened, um, when they had called the cops on Vince, and the girls were saying what Vince had done to him. Well, the older brother, Michael, which I think he was like a year or two older than Chris,
I was going to
had
ask.
came in at the time, heard the girls saying this, and he just walked right back out. And he found Vince and started beating on Vince. And cops were called. Um, and I think it was Vince's girlfriend that ended up calling the cops on that. And the crazy thing is I think Michael's assault charges got dropped. I don't know if he was ever I don't know if he actually got charged with it.
Hmm.
So that was
So Chris was 18 at the time, so we think Michael was probably like 20, maybe.
yeah.
Okay.
Michael was probably about 20, and Chris had turned, because his birthday, well, it's tomorrow. It's February 1st. So
Oh,
he had turned 18 in February, and then this happened in July. But nobody thought Chris could even have the capability of doing this. But I think, I thought about this long and hard. And I think given the circumstances, if I were to put myself in that exact predicament, and it would have been my sister, and the situation would have been the same, and if I felt like no one was doing anything, I can completely see myself doing the same thing in that moment to try, to try to help them. I mean, I'm not saying it's the right thing, but I'm saying I think given the right circumstances, I think people are capable of doing something like that, even if it's not in their usual nature. I
right.
think that,
Yeah.
Because he
Mhm.
had been traumatized himself. He,
yeah,
and then he also was trying to protect his little sister who was actually being molested at that moment. At least he thought she was. Um,
and
Dr.
he knew for
Freud
a
could tell you
fact
about
that and he knew for a fact that they were, because of Anna a couple days before even giving him specific things that he was doing, So
Let
I
me,
think
I'm sorry.
I think his mind was just probably going at a million miles an hour in
Hmm.
those last couple days,
Yeah.
leading up to that.
Now remind me who Anna is because the sisters are Cassie or Casey
Ariana.
and Vicky. Okay.
Ariana, everybody calls her Anna. So
And who is she?
she's the oldest sister.
Okay, thank you. I want to make
Okay.
sure
So
I had
there's
all that straight.
three sisters. Okay.
And Vicky's
Yeah.
the youngest, and that's the one that he heard crying when he walked in that night.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think she would have been about 5 or 6 at the time.
Okay.
Wow, that's unbelievable. Let me ask you this, and you may have said this earlier, but I'm trying to get a visual in my mind. At the home that Chris broke into, and the father's there, Vince with the girls. Who else lived there?
At that time, just him and the girls.
Oh, so
Yep.
they live with him, or were they visiting?
They were living with him. Yeah.
Oh, okay, so they didn't live with the mother at all.
No, she was trying to get custody of the girls at that time.
Oh man, I wonder how, because CPS got involved at one point, right?
Oh yeah, CPS had been involved multiple times. Even a bus driver had turned Vince in for him watching Vince with his hand between the girls' legs.
Oh my gosh, and
Even a bus driver had turned this in.
I don't understand how things like that slip through. I mean, because to me that's an instant removal from the home and an investigation, and
I
then
think,
there.
yeah, I think when you're in such a small town, such as that one was, I think unfortunately sometimes politics get involved.
Mm-hmm.
So it's who knows you, kind of thing, and I know that, Chris and his mother and his siblings, they didn't have nothing. I mean, they were literally, I think at the very end there, they were living in an abandoned trailer with no running water,
So
no
that's what it was
electricity.
about. Money.
They had nothing. So it's kind of just he said, she said kind of thing, unfortunately,
What
you
Yeah,
know,
and you need aggressive people working those cases too, and maybe that won't
absolutely.
happen. Yeah.
what type of work did Vince do? I'm just curious what that you're saying that it was like
He worked for the city.
ah,
Mm.
Yeah.
there we have it. Wow,
Yeah.
that's really sad. And a lot of times they will put the place the kids with the parent that has the job just because they're like, well, they're better off because he has a job and
Oh,
that part of
yeah.
it very slightly. But if the man has, been accused of any type of abuse or sexual allegations, for sure,
And
obviously that's not the best place for him to be.
mhm. The other kid that was molested by Vince, the other stepson, I am now in contact with him and his wife. Of course, now he's an adult.
Right.
Um, but he has gave a statement also to Chris's lawyer, detailing
Good.
the abuse that he suffered, the molesting, and and I will not speak for him because we I know he doesn't want his name out there.
Right.
Um, it's just, you get that stigma, especially when you're a
Yeah.
male.
Yeah.
But he did say, if this were ever to go to trial, no matter what, he would do whatever it takes to
Good.
help Chris get out, because
Good.
he knows, I mean, he
I have a
still
question.
is traumatized.
Yeah.
I have a question. I'm going back again to the Dr. Phil episode. There was a woman on there named Janet who was a criminal justice advocate. She seemed very invested with you guys, with this case, and with Chris and all of you. Is she still on the scene helping out?
Yeah, she still does help out and stuff. Right now we're right at this point though, we're filing for, like, every 3 years you can file for a pardon from the governor. I mean, the chances of getting one are super slim, and then it goes down to the politics at the time, like, who the governor is, because you can only get it from the governor.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Who the governor is, if they're going to want to pardon you, because if they don't think that it's going to cause them to get a election,
Right.
reelected or whatever they're doing, they're always trying to get the public acceptance on
Yeah.
what they believe is correct. But I really feel, and I'm not saying that I don't believe Chris should have done time um for taking Vince's life. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that I think that 1800 years
Oh, that's excessive. That's
Well,
was
absolutely.
And
excessive.
absolutely.
And
Can you tell our listeners how long Chris has been in prison at this point?
22 years right now. So we're talking about an 18-year-old versus, well, tomorrow he will be 40 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you're not even the same person that you
Exactly.
were at
Absolutely
18.
not. Yeah.
You definitely, I mean, I can't even imagine, I think about my life at 18 versus my life now is
Yeah.
your point of view, the way you see things is different, the way you deal with things is differently.
Yeah.
Our sentencing is pretty darn harsh here in the United States.
Yeah, I've never heard of that, but I Googled it and I saw where there were some people that had gotten 15,000 years and 6,000. And I was going, I must have missed all this because I've never heard of anyone getting excessive sentences like that, but it's happened quite a bit. And I
Mhm.
was really shocked to hear that.
Right.
Pretty
And Virginia got rid of parole in 1995. So
Oh,
anybody sentenced after 1995 is not eligible for parole at all.
for
that
any
is
for any offense of any kind.
No, there is no parole in
Wow, I didn't know
Virginia
that.
after
is
1995. Now,
unbelievable.
if you were sentenced to, so like even, um, you could be a serial killer. You could be a serial killer. You could be whatever. And if you had committed an offense before 1995, which he actually was in prison with a very famous serial killer in there, and they still go up for parole.
Hmm.
He's
Does
in
it
there
work?
with he
Mhm.
was in the same pod with that Monty Rizzle. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
I haven't. Have you, Crystal?
If you look him up, he was one of the youngest serial killers.
Mm.
I think he had killed 5 women and raped 12.
Oh my God.
And that guy still gets to go up for parole.
That is,
So tell me,
Yeah.
tell me the logic in that, I
maybe
mean,
let me ask you this. As far as the petition goes, I read about a petition. Is that still valid and going? And
yeah,
what is the deal with
we
it?
still have a petition. I think we're up to 196,000 signatures on it so far.
Okay.
Anybody feel free to go ahead and share that.
If you'll send it
Um,
to us, we can post it on
Yeah,
our True Crime
we'll
Broads
put
page.
a note in our show notes. Yeah, and like she said, our social media.
okay,
Yeah,
that'll
and it's
work. Yeah.
supposed to be given to. Where's this going once you get it all?
It's supposed to actually be sent to the governor of Virginia, since he's the
Okay.
only person that could actually pardon Chris. And we're not asking for a pardon of the crime. We're just asking for a second chance to be
Yeah,
like,
right.
I have done enough time,
Yeah.
That makes sense.
yeah, we're not saying that he's not guilty, because he is.
Mhm.
We're just saying that, he's done enough time that he should be
Yeah.
able to have a second chance.
Well, and he was, absolutely trying to defend his sisters that were being sexually molested. So
Right.
Yeah,
And that's
so
the thing, is just the
it sounds
unfair
like that.
sentencing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds like that wasn't even considered as a mitigating factor, that he
No,
was
nothing
walking
was.
molestation.
And I think it would have been, had he allowed, was allowed to go to trial, which he would have, but I think he was so scared at the time
yeah.
with that whole
The
death penalty.
the attorney that advised him to take the plea deal, where did that attorney come from?
So anytime you're dealing with a capital murder case, they have because no one in that area would have been, because I think you have to be a certain kind of attorney to even be involved in a capital murder case. So I
That makes
think that one
sense.
came out of a different part of Virginia. I know that guy is not alive anymore, but I really feel like
So he was hired by the family. He was not court appointed.
no, he was court appointed. The family
Okay.
did not have any money, so
Okay.
Chris, they didn't have anything. So I think, obviously that's going to be a factor too, because
Absolutely. I
they
think
get paid.
a lot of the justice of the United States is about how much money you have
Mhm.
to defend yourself. If you can afford a
Absolutely.
really good defense attorney, you get a better outcome.
Oh yeah.
Right, because if you're not being paid to defend somebody, privately, I don't think you're, most of the time, unfortunately, people don't work as hard for you.
Well, and they can
So,
afford jury consultants and all
and
kinds.
all of that stuff, yeah. But
Wow.
I feel like knowing what he knows now, and knowing that he really would never have been eligible for the death penalty, if he had known all of that information prior, I think his choices would have been different. And I think it would have been very difficult for 12 people on a jury to convict someone
Yeah.
for that long of time with having all of those factors in place, you know.
I don't even think they would have considered that, in my opinion.
I could
mean,
see him getting like 5 or 10, 15, 20
20,
years.
yeah, like a
Yeah, 20 years, I could see it, but because I mean, Chris is in prison with a lot of people that are have done murders that have gotten 20, 25 years.
Hmm.
regular normal sentences that you
Yeah,
hear
that
about.
was a
Right.
whole plea deal, definitely.
Real quick, can you share with us, like y'all had mentioned earlier that y'all had met because of the Dr. Phil show.
Oh yeah.
Do you know about the case before you watched it, or was it just on TV and you just started?
No, I did not know about that case. And actually, that's what drew me into that case. So I was at work, and the thing that actually drew me to watch that episode of the Dr. Phil um, was the fact that there was a case that was from my hometown
Oh,
that was coming up on the Dr. Phil show that I really wanted to watch. So
uh-huh.
on my lunch break, I would go in my car and I'd get on, YouTube to see the new episode of Dr. Phil, because I didn't want to miss this one that was from my hometown. Well, when that one aired, how they always have like the next segment coming on, like a little preview of it.
Yeah.
What caught my attention was the whole somebody sentenced to 1,800 years. And I'm like, I have never heard of somebody getting sentenced to 1,800 years.
Yeah, we were gagged when we heard that. We were just to like look it up, and we're just familiar with the Virginia sentencing like that.
Oh yeah, because I am a true crime junkie,
Yeah.
So I watched that episode, and what really hit me in that episode was listening to Chris tell the story. It really bothered me. It really, like, I really felt for Chris.
Right.
And I sent him a quick email, just like, people are behind you, and sent it, never expected to get a response, didn't, just a quick, and he, responded. And he had a bunch of people at that time, after that Dr. Phil episode hit, that were messaging him and stuff, but he ended up emailing me back and saying thank you or whatever. And we just kind of started conversing from there. And then and at the time, with my name being Billie, he thought he was just talking to some guy. He didn't,
Interesting.
he didn't even know. He was just like, man, this guy's really cool. You know, we can be friends. We like a lot of the same stuff. You
I
know?
love it.
Yeah. So it wasn't even for a while that he realized that I was actually a girl. So, yeah. And then, you know, he's just, we just super supportive of each other. And he's just such a wonderful, kind, and gentle person. Like
Mhm.
we have never even had an argument. Like he is just such a passive, um, gentle human being that it it blows my mind that he's in
You
there for
also
that.
live in Virginia?
No, I'm actually from Kansas.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
I went to visit him before in there. Um, and yeah, so that was a first experience for me going to into a prison to visit somebody. I'd never stepped foot in a prison before
What was
that.
that like? Did they slam the doors behind you and lock them?
Uh,
Me so much.
it kind of like the first part honestly reminds me of a an airport because you go in and you know you put your shoes in a little thing
Oh
and
my
they kind of pat
goodness.
you down, you know, and you go through a little x-ray thing just kind of like an airport
Uh-huh.
before you go through the regular doors that they, you know, you go through one set of gates and then, you know, they stop you there, then you go through another set of gates, they open up, and then you're finally into the facility. And it kind of reminds me of a gymnasium. It's a large air, it looks like a large gym where they have like the meetings. And so you walk into there and they have little chairs set up, you know, two chairs, one chair in front of the other, and spaced out quite a bit.
So
And
there wasn't
so
glass. There was like y'all got to see each other, like you could
yeah.
actually reach out,
Mhm.
touch them, maybe.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah,
Okay.
we got a
Oh,
hug.
wow.
And so that was like very interesting for me. But yeah, it kind of reminded me of an airport when you first walk in there, you know. And I was kind of like, I don't know what to expect in
Right.
this. You know,
I
I
can
have
imagine.
no idea.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
And y'all been writing each other ever since. And that was in 2021, right?
Yeah, that was in 2021.
Okay.
And that's so awesome that you're advocating for him and you're a loving creature for him to have on the outside besides his family. That's
Give him
so
some hope.
wonderful.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Oh
amazing.
yeah, it's so great. I mean, on both sides because being able to support him being able to support me, it really goes both ways. Like I cannot imagine not having him because he's so positive. He's such a positive individual. And we try to work with each other on that positivity, you know, just
That's
we're
good.
always trying to be positive with each other. And like we'll even do where like a certain time of night we both meditate at a certain time and um you know just keep that
Uh,
positive stuff.
yeah. No, that
Does
makes
he
sense.
does he share a cell with someone else?
Oh yeah, yeah. um he shares a cell and he's in the honor pod. um so he had just got moved down to this level 3. When you have the crime that he has, it takes 20 years before you can move down to a lower level. So as soon as that 20 years, he got to move down to this lower level prison.
So it's like
Um,
level security or something.
yeah, it's like a level 3. And now he's in the honor pod in that, and he's doing motorcycle classes. It's like a small engine repair. You work on motorcycles, you work on
Oh,
lawnmowers,
good.
you work on stuff like that, which he loves to.
Something productive and get
Yeah.
your mind off of being in there. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
because he's took every program that he can take. So
Prior to the
he's
honor pod, was he in a cell by himself?
no, I don't think he's ever had a single cell. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I guess that makes sense. Probably not enough room for just one person in a cell, I guess.
Yeah, there's just so many people, and especially in Virginia prisons, there is a lot of people in there.
Well, and humans are social creatures. I mean, I think if I had to go, I would want someone in my cell, assuming they weren't super crazy
Right. No, not a killer or that
or
one guy.
wanted to kill me.
Yeah. Now, on that, I want to ask you again about the petition. How many signatures are y'all looking to get before you turn it to the governor of Virginia?
I think all we have left before it gets sent out is 4,000 more.
Oh, so you're
So
doing
I
100,000.
that's all
Oh,
we need. because we have 196,000
Hopefully we can
and
help
some
with that.
odd number. Yeah, that would be
Wait,
fantastic.
how many, Billy, do you have currently? I missed it.
Around 196,000.
Okay, yeah, we'll send that around. Absolutely. And it'll be on our social media, which is Instagram. It's True Crime Broads if you want to check it out. And then we have a Facebook page called True Crime Broads. We'll put it there. We also have a discussion group, and there's about 8,800 people in that. We'll post it in there as well. So, and we'll also put it in our show notes. So if you can send us a link, we'll just copy and paste that everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I can
We can
absolutely
get
do
that
that.
finished and get that sent over to the governor. That'd be great.
Yeah, that would be nice because we agree with you.
Yeah.
I mean, no, and I think that our listeners, like, regardless of if you do agree with, should he have actually gone through with this murder or not,
Mhm.
obviously that's a very touchy subject. But I think I don't know.
Right.
It seems like most people would agree that 1,800 years is excessive, especially with the mitigating circumstances. And do you have I want to ask a specific question. Do you have an opinion, or have you, I shouldn't say opinion, but have you looked into Virginia law? Like, what is your understanding of the Virginia law for defense of another? Because self-defense and defense of another, those are going
Right.
to be
So
different.
that actually could have been a mitigating factor that would have got him way less time. Like he would not have got the time had his attorney used
The
that
defense of
defense.
another.
Yeah. And they had that. I mean, I have all of the transcripts from his interview, from everything. And, from day one, that was said. I mean, everybody knew, even the police officers at the time, because some of them had been investigating Vince on that stuff. They knew what was going on. They knew that this, they kind of knew the story already. I mean,
I
but
know
before,
I know it's probably silly to think that this could ever happen, but I think that it should be against the law for the intimidation. They do that a lot in these cases. They intimidate the person into thinking this, and then they end up making a choice like he did. You know what I'm saying? I just
oh,
I feel like
right.
that shouldn't. I know it's going to be hard to regulate that, obviously, but that shouldn't be allowed. I mean, there's so many other things that aren't allowed. That shouldn't be allowed. They shouldn't be allowed to say, okay, now you better make this deal because otherwise you're getting the death penalty. Well,
Well,
let's just wait and see.
and that was but the court appointed attorney, that was his opinion, right?
Um, that's what they said, but we've looked into the laws. Um, we have looked into the laws. We've had other people look into the laws that are legal, I have one friend of mine that is in law school, and they said that he would have never fallen into those factors. Like he would have never um, fallen into getting the death penalty. So I really think that he was, even by his own attorney, was misguided.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds like maybe his attorney's malpractice could be brought into this equation to
Yeah,
help him out.
unfortunately, his attorney is no longer alive. And
Well, it could be, or but I think they can still point it out though that he was given bad advice. But I see what you're saying. They can't call him in.
right,
Yeah,
right. And
that's
then he had tried to do an appeal before on those grounds.
hmm
And
How'd that go?
they just brush it off. They just say, "Oh, you know what? We think that but they're using the factor. They're not using any of the mitigating standards on that. They're just saying, the death penalty is, or the 1,800 years is better than the death penalty. So we
Yeah,
don't see how, um, but they're not taking the factors that really he wouldn't have ever been eligible for the death penalty. So
yeah,
I,
that's
you know,
horrible.
I think a lot of times, you're dealing with, a lot of people that just rubber stamp things, and they're so used to the same old thing, the same old story, the same old whatever, that it's hard for them to like look at individual cases,
Right.
and I know that part of it is they're just so tired of the same open and closing doors that people do this all the time. But in this case, I think it is totally different because Chris never had any kind of criminal history before that. There wasn't. there wasn't like this, you know, pattern of things going on. It's not like he was a multiple violent offender before this happened. You know, you got to take into consideration, like you said, all of mitigating factors with his sisters, because I really think that given the right circumstances, anybody could be capable of this, given the right circumstances.
Right, right.
Does
I do.
that mean that you're a horrible person because you could have done this? I mean, I don't think so. I don't think that this one incident, um, given the situation, defines who a person is.
Yeah.
I have one question before we wrap up. I don't know anything about the current Virginia governor. Is she, you said it was a female. Is she on her way?
No, it is a male.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's a male. Is he on his way out? Is he new?
I believe that this is his last year in Virginia.
Okay.
So
That could be helpful.
they will have a new, there will be a new governor coming into play. Now there are two females that are running for governor. So I believe that this next governor will be a female on both the Democratic and Republican side. So I think that more than likely there's a 90% chance that we will have a female governor in place.
My last
And-
question.
So this is Governor Youngkin we're talking about.
Yes, right.
Has he pardoned anyone before or reduced the sentence
I
before?
do not think so since he has been in office. I don't think he has pardoned anyone. So I think that the chances are very slight. Although Chris's attorney is still working on the pardon, so it has not been sent in yet. And a lot of times that can take years before it even goes, because the first thing it does is go to a parole board, and then they decide whether it even gets passed on to the governor or not at that point. So then at that point it goes to the governor, but it can take years before they even see it. But at any time, the governor, before getting that pardon or whatever, could pardon them himself. Like,
Okay, that's awesome.
he
So
has the
looks like
power to do that.
looks like he was sworn in on January 15, 2022 for a 4-year term.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's good. I think that, the closer to the end, probably the better chance.
Right.
Well, we'll do anything we can help. Please do send us anything you think that would be helpful for us to share and publish, and we'll do it. And we'll put it in these show notes. So anyone that listens to the show will glance down and see it in the show notes and be able to link it from there or any of our social media platforms.
Right.
Well, Bill,
Absolutely.
thank you so much for all your time. This has been a fantastic episode. We really enjoyed. We learned so much from you that we didn't already know about Chris's case. And thank you also for dialing him in. That was such a wonderful surprise that was able to be pulled off.
Right.
Like I said, we've tried that before and it didn't work out for whatever reason, but that was fantastic. So thank you, Billie. We're
You're
going to
welcome. Thank you guys.
if you want to jump back on for the part 2 next week, please feel free. And we will look forward to talking to you again soon. Thanks for joining us on True Crime Broads.
Thank you.
All right. I clicked on that, so now I can stop the recording here.
Okay.